In a corporate setting, the most dangerous person in the office is rarely the loudest voice. It is the one quietly mapping out everyone's personal vulnerabilities. In the next 10 minutes, you will understand the behavioral mechanics of workplace Machiavellianism, the pipeline of credit extraction and liability routing, and an operational defense protocol to insulate your career capital. Because corporate manipulation doesn't rely on emotional outbursts. It runs on cold data asymmetry. The modern corporate environment is an ideal habitat for the high Machiavellian profile. Workplaces reward results, optimization, and political positioning over emotional bonds, and that is precisely the terrain a manipulator moves through with ease. They are not breaking the rules of the building. They are exploiting them. To see one clearly, you have to look past office gossip and buzzwords and study the mechanics. This analysis draws strictly from empirical peer-reviewed organizational behavior literature and corporate risk management matrices to cut through popular misconceptions surrounding workplace toxicity. As established in foundational personality metrics tracking manipulative tendencies, the Machiavellian profile is defined by a distinct triad of behaviors: a completely cynical view of human nature, a cold detachment from emotional metrics, and a total willingness to use duplicity for personal advancement. They do not view colleagues as teammates or even competitors. They see them exclusively as operational leverage units. They do not seek to destroy the system. They seek to master its blind spots to extract maximum professional capital for themselves. If this analysis is mapping a dynamic you recognize from your own workplace, subscribe to the Shadow Protocol and hit like. New clinical analysis every week. Now, let us examine the infiltration strategy. A high Machiavellian supervisor or coworker rarely initiates their strategy with overt hostility. Their primary objective is intelligence acquisition, executed through two distinct behavioral entry points. Site's strategic vulnerability mapping is a behavioral label, not a DSM diagnosis, but the pattern it describes is precise. In this phase, the manipulator presents an incredibly polished, trustworthy, and supportive persona. They are exceptional active listeners. They invite you to casual lunches and private coffee breaks, gently prompting you to vent about workplace frustrations, career anxieties, or pressures at home. Watch how it actually plays out.
Honestly, just between us, how are you holding up? You have looked buried since the reorganization.
Stretched thin, if I am being honest. With everything happening at home right now, I am barely keeping the Henderson account above water.
That was not a colleague checking in. That was intelligence collection. Notice the structural error targets make. They mistake this calculated data mining for authentic corporate mentorship. The Machiavellian profile does not listen to connect. They listen to catalog. Every piece of sensitive data you surrender is quietly archived to be deployed later during performance reviews, political realignments, or resource allocation disputes. Calculated kindness, again, is a behavioral label rather than a clinical diagnosis. The mechanism behind it, however, is exact. The manipulator will proactively offer unearned favors, shielding you from a minor administrative critique, securing a small budget exception, or handing you a high-visibility project. Empirical research that built and validated a dedicated workplace Machiavellianism scale defines the profile by amoral manipulation and a pronounced desire for control over others. The unsolicited favor is not an act of professional generosity. It is a tactical transaction designed to install an unpayable political debt. The exact second they require a proxy vote in a management meeting, a signature on a compromised compliance log, or an extra-legal operational compromise, they will pull that handle. They convert the memory of their past kindness into a structural obligation you cannot decline without looking completely unprofessional. The infiltration strategy establishes the intelligence base. What follows is the direct capital extraction, the mechanism by which your work product is systematically converted into their advancement. Subscribe to the Shadow Protocol and hit like to help this analysis reach others. We deliver structured clinical deconstructions every week to help you decode manipulative behavior and protect your long-term autonomy. Let us return to the analysis. Once the intelligence matrix is built, the high Machiavellian manipulator shifts their focus to direct capital extraction, allocating risk downward while routing credit upward. High-Machiavellian manipulators are master architects of temporary alliances. They carefully choose colleagues who are exceptionally industrious but possess low political self-protection mechanisms. Organizational research models workplace Machiavellianism as a multidimensional profile built on 3 factors: maintaining power, harsh management tactics, and manipulative behaviors. Routing credit upward and risk downward is simply how those factors express themselves under pressure. During the execution phase of a major initiative, they remain highly elusive, avoiding direct signatures or ownership of high-risk tasks. But the exact second the initiative yields positive data, they execute an aggressive corporate pivot.
I pulled the framework together over the last few weeks and steered it to close. I am happy to walk leadership through exactly how we got here.
Watch the move. They present the final report to executive leadership, frame themselves as the strategic steering mechanism, and use passive exclusion to leave your name out of the narrative. If the project encounters an error, however, the architecture flips instantly. They produce a meticulously preserved paper trail showing the execution phase was handled entirely by your unit, leaving you holding the structural liability while they remain completely insulated. Before we reveal the operational defense tools required to isolate your work product from this extraction framework, you must prepare for the single most dangerous configuration of corporate Machiavellianism. It is called the manufactured scapegoat strategy, and it is exceptionally difficult to defend against because it operates completely outside your awareness until the trap is sprung. By the time executive leadership notices a performance deficit, the paper trail has already been engineered to make your termination look like a pure operational necessity. Pay absolute attention to this structural threat. The manufactured scapegoat strategy is the channel's term for this pattern, not a clinical diagnosis. But it is the most precise description of what is happening, the definitive manifestation of organizational liability routing. When an institutional failure occurs, a missed financial projection, a compliance breach, or a toxic project collapse, the high-Machiavellian manipulator does not defend their team. They manage the executive narrative. And the groundwork for that narrative was laid long before the failure. They use a technique called tactical documentation pacing. Months before any crisis breaks, they seed ambiguous, faint praise remarks into project logs and internal emails. Each one looks like a routine management observation to an outside auditor. Together, they are a slow-built case file with your name on it. Notice the craftsmanship. Every entry is defensible in isolation. Every entry is dated before the crisis. And every entry quietly names you. Then the project fails. And the instant it hits executive review, those scattered records are compiled into a single comprehensive brief.
I want to be fair to them. I genuinely do. But the documentation speaks for itself, and I flagged this pattern months ago. I did everything I could.
He does not present the brief as a weapon. He presents it as a tragic, transparent explanation of why your performance failed to meet his high strategic standards. The performance of reluctance is the most lethal part of the maneuver, because it makes him look like the responsible adult in the room while you are escorted out of it. Your entire career capital is converted into an emergency firewall to protect his corporate survival, and you are isolated before you even realize an audit was initiated against you. By the time you sense the room has shifted, the verdict is already written. Now you understand the full architecture of the threat. The final section is the operational protocol to make your professional infrastructure completely extraction-proof. Defeating corporate Machiavellianism requires you to immediately treat your professional life not as an emotional community, but as a cold, ledger-based transaction. You must implement 3 immutable rules of structural infrastructure defense. You must systematically remove human trust from your operational loop. Maintain a private, off-network digital timestamp repository of every single professional directive, verbal agreement, or casual project pivot that occurs with this individual. Log the date, the time, and the exact operational scope discussed. If a Machiavellian manager gives you a verbal instruction during a casual corridor meeting, immediately follow up with a summary email stating, "Per our conversation, I am executing task X under criteria Y. Please notify me via reply if any parameters require adjustment." If they leave that email unanswered, their silence is structurally locked in as confirmation data. You have just converted their favorite instrument, ambiguity, into a dated record that works for you. Completely remove all emotional and qualitative vocabulary from your professional interactions with this profile. Treat every email, text message, and chat message as an asset that will eventually be read aloud in a deposition or an executive board meeting. Never complain, never explain your personal stress, and never comment on office politics. If they attempt to mine you for information using a sympathetic prompt, apply this sterile script. My current focus is entirely on optimizing the performance metrics of the Q3 project. The internal dynamics are outside my operational scope. By presenting a completely flat, non-reactive professional profile, you convert yourself into an incredibly low-yield target for data extraction. There is nothing to weaponize in a sentence that contains no feelings. Never hand off a critical work product, file, or strategic brief through real-time channels or physical drop-offs. Use the asynchronous receipt loop. Submit all deliverables exclusively through systems that generate an automatic, unalterable digital ledger, such as a centralized corporate server portal or a formally routed project tracking ticket. Ensure that your handoff note explicitly contains a comprehensive summary of what was completed, the explicit data verification files, and a timestamp of submission. By building this unalterable digital receipt matrix, you completely neutralize their ability to route credit away from your desk or frame your execution as delayed. You anchor your professional reputation to physical code, not corporate narratives. The corporate ladder is built on metrics, paper trails, and unalterable receipts. The moment you stop looking for a corporate family, see the landscape for what it is, and fortify your professional infrastructure, you structurally remove most of the leverage a manipulator depends on. The moment a corporate Machiavellian realizes your digital paper trail is unbreachable, they will pivot from silent credit extraction to overt boundary negotiations. They will attempt to use verbal pressure to force you back into a compliance framework. To master the precise linguistic and behavioral architecture required to enforce consequences against an aggressive manipulator, watch our comprehensive guide on how to set boundaries with a manipulator right here on the left. Maintain your baseline. Protect your reality. We will see you in the next analysis.